DrJikininki, I have a favorable lineup, so I need just to play my best game to win.
He's obviously well known in the community. He's just a solid player, really consistent with what he does.
Will he play safe or will he play aggressive?
I think I'm well off enough to really compete with him at a high level and make sure I'm on top of my game.
I don't really want to make any predictions. That seems wrong.
DrJikininki versus Neirea. Let's go!
The stage is set for the next match. It's DrJikininki versus Neirea. That's admirable. Give me the scoop on these two players.
Yeah, it's the veteran versus the newcomer in this match. Neirea been in the scene for a long time, and as Brian mentioned, a previous world champion competitor. He's played 23 matches in the Hearthstone Championship Tour since 2016. DrJikininki, he's played 10.
10, and they were from the playoffs that we just saw about a month ago. So he's new, but, you know, his style isn't pinned down. You heard Neirea mention, will he play aggressive? You know, will he play a little bit more safe? It's hard to tell at this point because he has such a small sample size of matches to go on. And these guys' deck lists, you know, we just saw them for a brief moment on screen, but anything stand out to you as you know, something to look out for in this match, Admirable?
One of the big things I'm looking at is their approach to the later game stages. Neirea's chosen to go with Jade Druid as sort of his giant build mechanic, where DrJikininki, who I'll just refer to as Dr. J from this point, it's kind of a mouthful to say, he's brought Jade Shaman to the table here, and it's very heavily teched for aggression. 2 copies of Lightning Storm, 2 copies of Maelstrom Portal, 2 copies of Jinyu Water Speaker. That's a lot of stuff dedicated to controlling the early board and stabilizing your life total. Second thing to look at, though, is the Reno Warlock decks, where they're somewhat similar, but Dr. J, he's got Soulfire in his build. He's got the big combo damage. You look at Neirea's list, he's got Soulfire in it. He's got Mind Control tech. Very different approaches to a couple of these lists. They could end up being very key, but as we get into game number 1 here, Rogue versus Warlock, Dr. J going to be on the Rogue. This matchup can get a little bit tricky at times for Neirea.
Yeah, it can. You know, a lot of times the Twisting Nether is the only way you have to deal with a big concealed board. There are a few other things that Dr. J has in his list that might, you know, throw him for a curveball. He's got Shaku in his list, which of course is a 2/3 stealth that gives you a random card from your opponent's class. That can add things into the mix that you weren't accounting for when you looked at the deck list. And, you know, a big thing here is Neirea's experience. He was a runner-up at the 2015 Europe Championship. He made it to the World Championship. So is his experience going to help him keep calm in those situations where he may be behind in a match, where he really doesn't know the way out of a situation? That experience is nothing to scoff at.
It certainly isn't, and we even saw that really take place in our first match, where Frozen, another player who's been a veteran of the scene for a long time, nerves were clearly getting to him. The way that he played in his first couple of games is not reflective of the way he typically does. And I think that experience edge really gives Neirea an edge here. If you just kind of look at the body language of the two, I mean, he just looks calm and focused at home. Neirea, Dr. J looks very focused. He's been a little fidgety. I think as the games continue to progress, if he finds himself in some tough spots, it's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, Dr. J, though, he looked, you know, not by far, but pretty head and shoulders above a lot of the field. A lot of the Americas players that made it to the Winter Championship. And, you know, will that continue to carry over in his matches this week? Will he be able to replicate the success that he had in the Americas playoffs? Only time will tell. But right off the bat, he lets the Doomsayer go off. He did have some options to kill it, but it would have expended a lot of resources. Is it worth using Cold Blood this early on just to kill a Doomsayer, leaving your board vulnerable to, say, Mortal Coil, things like that? So, you know, going in a 2 mana, maybe he could have, but this is sort of where the big stage comes in. Is he feeling comfortable enough to make risks this early on in the tournament?
That's a big thing to point out, because honestly, I really liked the expensive kill on. He could have used the preparation and the Cold Blood in his hand to put 5 power on one of his little guys on board, and then use that dagger up, take care of that Doomsayer. He would have ended with 6 power on board. Something to really think about is hand reading and how these players get signals from one another. Would Neirea have chosen to coin Doomsayer if he had Mortal Coil in hand? That's typically a play that you would see Neirea make in that situation, rather than coin the Doomsayer. And if you look at the texture of Dr. J's hand, it's almost entirely dedicated to dealing damage as quickly as possible. That single turn could have changed the scope of this game. With the way his hand is constructed, I'm curious if damage would have just been the play.
Yeah, and Dr. J, you know, maybe nerves already getting to him. We talked about him the other day about how tough his group is. Go ahead and take a look.
I think the biggest weakness right now is the group I got put in. I think the group is extremely talented. I think the group is extremely strong. And I think if I can get out of this group and then make it to top 8, it may actually be easier for my lineup to do well in top 8 than to do in this group stage.
And frankly, I have to agree with him. I think he's got his work cut out for him in this group, and the lineups, they don't match up poorly against him, but they're not favorable, I don't think.
Well, that's a 10 damage South Sea deckhand that gets killed, and you can tell what Dr. J's plan is with his hand.
And it makes perfect sense.
Draws a counterfeit coin. For him, his plan here is to kill him before Reno Jackson becomes an issue. We're going into turn 4. He never used a coin early on in the game just to be able to take care of that board with the Doomsayer early on. And now he's at 10. Dr. J starting to piece together the damage.
Well, he's not just at 10. He's got the curse from Curse of Rafam in his hand. Neirea has to expend 2 mana or he will take 2 damage a turn from that effect. That effect is not something that you play in your deck right there. That is an effect that Dr. J put into his hand. Every turn it's there, it's 2 more damage. Leroy in hand for Dr. J, that's 6 more. Neirea really wanted to play Kazakus on this turn. It's very important for him to get that potion online. I don't think he's got that liberty right now.
But if he were to play Kazakus this turn, he'd give DrJikininki more outs for lethal the following turn. So he decides not to. Sap picked up. Eviscerate would have been enough damage to end the game, and he actually still has 1 more turn because Reno Jackson is not an issue going into turn 5. He knows the coin has been expended. He's just going to continue to chip away with this dagger. Neirea might have to play Kazakus Potion here if he doesn't pick up a taunt, just to try and gain a little bit more armor. What range of damage is Neirea going to play around in this situation?
That's a good question, because if he's not dead from 9, is he ever dead from 8? That's a pretty big no. I'm curious if we're going to see a 5 here or if we're going to see a 1, but either way, he has to find a way to defend himself. Currently, none of these options do that.
Yeah, he goes for a 5, so this is going to be the only card he's going to be able to play this turn is the Kazakus. I can imagine he's looking for armor, looking for ways to stop damage. Summon 2 friendly minions that have died in this game, not the best. He has had a Doomsayer die, so maybe if he wants to sort of block future turns from Dr. J, that's a possibility.
Well, the other thing, too, is if he wants to stay alive, he's got to find a way to get a clock on Dr. J. I'm looking at the 5/5, personally.
I'd say so. Freeze 2 random enemy minions with
There's
Conceal.
gain 7. It's going to be gain 7 armor for sure.
So Dr. J's window is starting to close. Let's see if he can pick up some damage. Looks like a Gadget Sand Auctioneer.
Ooh. Well, not damage, but certainly a strong draw at this point. With Counterfeit Coin and Preparation, these mana effects aren't doing anything for Dr. J right now. Cycle him for some fresh cards, thanks to Auctioneer. Big pickup.
It's a little bit different than what his game plan was at the beginning, but picks up the Conceal.
TJ, that is a huge draw right now. Neirea no longer has a way to interact with Gadget Sand Auctioneer.
Yeah, he was not even given Mystic Wool, I don't think, from the
he took freeze 2 enemy minions, so he can't actually stop the damage from it.
He stopped the damage, but can't stop the draw. So that's going to give Dr. J multiple options to try and pick up more burn spells. But the armor from Neirea is going to help him stay alive for a little bit longer, and he's starting to peel on some damage. But Neirea needs Reno ASAP.
Just needs anything to defend himself. 15 is fairly comfortable. But the problem now is that there's a questing adventurer. So this is a 2-pronged attack from Dr. J at this point. And that's another questing adventurer. Is this where he's going to go? He's going to wait.
I like waiting. Picks up another Conceal.
Oh my gosh.
I think you just throw the second questing adventure into the mix.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? I know you're looking to end the game the following turn, so why not throw that little bit of extra damage out there? It's also just another card that buffs up his buddy over there.
Yeah, no backstab targets readily available unless he wants to damage his own minions. With Sap, with Leroy, with backstab, I don't think there's a card in Neirea's deck that gets him out of this other than Reno Jackson.
Can't even tap for it. He's only at 7 mana. And look at Dr. J. You can see him look off to the top left of the camera there. He's actually looking at Neirea. He's staring him down during his turns, trying to get every inch of reaction out of him. Every piece of information that he can get is going to help him move on in this.
Valiant effort from Neirea here, but it's no good. Leroy is going to lock up game 1.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a great job by Dr. J playing his hand to its fullest. Didn't wait.
Smile.
Little smirk. Little smirk.
I mean, that's the perfect one to take. I mean, game number 1, this is the breather for Dr. J. I mean, imagine the difference between losing and winning game 1. You're like, I knew it. Things weren't going to go well today. Can't get in that mindset. Now, that's alleviated. Feeling good.
Yeah, first match on stage. Even though playoffs is a pretty big stage, it's not as big. There's no live crowd. You're not playing for this big of stakes. You're not playing for a spot at the World Championship. You're not playing for that big of a prize pool. So getting that first win sort of out of the way, out of your system, I would smirk too.
Rightfully so. I mean, especially with the hand that he had, just all aggression, and he found a way